You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm Matt Reynolds. I'm here with Nikki Sims. You guys know us. We've been here for a while. And we're going to talk a little bit today about the importance of knowledge. We've talked some lately. You've probably heard us talk a little bit more towards the up-and-coming coach or somebody who just is the barbell enthusiast who wants to learn more. And I've thought a lot about this in our industry because there really isn't like board certified or nationally recognized coaches or trainers, right? There are certifications. You can get continuing education, and you got those sort of things like we offer with the PBC or like the CSCS or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's not like going to a medical doctor who everybody sort of has to pass through the same sort of standard. And we know this because I can remember back when I ran Strong Gym for a while, and it was like a very popular thing on Groupon to be able to get certified as a personal trainer on Groupon. So it was like, I don't remember, $100 or $200, and you too could be a certified personal trainer. Mm-hmm. And I often have joked about that kid that's the 18, 19, 20-year-old kid with the purple polo on at that gym that we know where you wear purple polos. And like, how do you separate yourself from that kid? And by the way, I want to also be clear. Almost all of us were that kid at one point. Mm-hmm. Like maybe not exactly that, but we were all at a spot where we just didn't know. And so for those of you out there who are listening, who are either enthusiasts and are trying to coach your spouse or significant other or parents or children or whatever, or if you're a professional coach, anything along that line, one of the greatest things that we can do to differentiate ourselves or distinguish ourselves is to make sure we're in this never-ending pursuit of knowledge so that we know more about the field than the others do in our field, right? How do you approach that?
Man, it's a tough one. I had this experience when I was like, I had this idea. I was like, I want to get more flexible. There's some similarities, just bear with me. And so I started searching on the internet, like, how can I increase my flexibility? And it's just such a large question to ask. And you have no idea where to start. You don't know where to focus. There are 4,500 different things you could look at, tons of YouTubes, apps. And I think it's similar when someone's like, I want to be a coach. I want to train people. It's just like, how do you even know what the first step is to take? And there are so many different pathways of knowledge you can get behind, and it's completely overwhelming. Yeah. And you see, the market's flooded with coaches, and you're like, should I try and be like them? Should I get my CSCS? Should I get my PBC? Like, how the hell do I know what to do? Yeah. So I think it's like a huge, it's your passion. And then you're met with this, step where you have to define your identity immediately. And it's really challenging. And then you go through this crisis of just well, I can't become that trainer with the purple shirt on because I've never trained anybody before. How do I start? Right.
Yeah. So that's a huge problem. And one of the biggest things I think that is, gosh, man, it's a huge positive, but it is also can be such an overwhelming negative, is that for those of you watching on YouTube, the entirety of the world's knowledge is right here on my cell phone, on every topic, right? And we didn't have that. I can remember when I first started to really get into this in the late 90s, and the internet was in its infancy, and most of the stuff that you could learn about in strength and conditioning was in the library. It was in the books,
magazines, maybe a few books from the Russians.
Yes, that was I got into that stuff, and I got lucky that I found that stuff. But it was it was anatomy. It was college anatomy books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was books on biomechanics. It was and so I think one thing that's really important to think about first off that I think would be a good part of this conversation is there are certain things that anybody in this industry should have a good working knowledge of. Would you agree with that?
That's fair. Yeah. What do you think they are?
Yeah. So like, I think basic anatomy is one of those things, right? Like I've taught anatomy and physiology at the college level, and I don't remember any of like the muscles of the face or even like the fingers, the nerves. The nerves, I know some because of the way that nerve kind of runs down your arm, and you'll have a problem sometimes with clients that have that it shuts down either the radial or the ulnar nerve, and so you'll know some of that stuff. But like, you should know what the hamstrings do.
Yes. Yeah.
You should know what the quads do. You should know what so the major muscle groups that we're training, whether that's strength training or for aesthetics or whatever, you should know their general, like how they make the body move. That basic sort of anatomy is important. You should know how a muscle cell works, how contractile tissue works, like that. Those are things. And by the way, those are things that I would say most, and again, I'm really not trying to throw just this anonymous kid underneath the bus, but the 18-year-old kid with the purple polo on, he probably doesn't know that. Mm-hmm. He just knows what he's seen in the magazines. And so one thing I think that you can definitely do to distinguish yourself is like, you should know basic anatomy. Basic anatomy is actually not that hard to understand. It's not. And one of the tricks that I've used for years is get a textbook for the youngest age group you can find that teaches the thing. So I don't know that there's anything earlier than high school for anatomy, but a high school anatomy textbook is excellent.
That's good.
To just get a quick overview. I had to get certified in different subjects as a teacher back when I was a public school teacher. And that's what I would do. I would just get the junior high textbooks, high school textbooks, and I would get a really quick, a good overview of the thing in general. And like that alone is it's definitely more knowledge than what the majority of the bro trainers have at the big box gyms. And so that's a great place to start.
Yeah. And it's on Khan Academy too. I think they have lots of levels, and that one, I love the way they deliver knowledge. Yeah.
We use Khan for math for our kids, and it works great. I mean, it's fantastic. So it's KHAN, right? That's right.
Or KAHN. I don't know. One of those.
There's an H in there. That's a great place to start. Understanding, if you are a barbell trainer as we are, basic biomechanics, I think are important too.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to have a PhD in physics. It would help. I don't, right? I understand. As a matter of fact, I would say my knowledge of anatomy is significantly higher than my biomechanics knowledge is. Like, it's right, but it's like bro biomechanics.
Yeah.
It's bro physics.
Yeah. And you can totally get by without that.
Yeah.
But you'll find that when you have questions, you end up just making stuff up. Right. And when you have like that intro level, like you've been talking about, when a problem arises or a movement looks weird, if you have just that little bit of base knowledge, your ability to find the solution or to find the answer is like you have a lot more doors open because you know the other questions to ask. So you can get by, you don't need it, but you're kind of going to run into a wall in your ability to keep solving problems.
That's right. Actually, this is I hadn't even thought about talking through this, but I think this is philosophically, when we were kids, and certainly every generation older than us, there was like a finite amount of stuff that you were taught in school that if you learned that finite amount of stuff, you were quote unquote educated. Now, there is no such thing as a finite amount of stuff. It's like it's infinite, right?
Yeah.
And so I would argue that the goal of education, of schooling, is to actually teach somebody really how to learn effectively, because there is no end of subjects or rabbit holes that you could go down and constantly learn about those things. And so for people who are better and more efficient at learning, that is one of the ways that you get ahead. If it takes a long time, if you have to read big time, hard master's level college textbooks and read them over and over and over again to get it, like, that's very hard to pick up. That's what's so great about something like, for years, I can remember being in late high school, early college, and like the early days of Wikipedia, right? And I can remember my professors being like, that's not a real encyclopedia. Like, you can't trust Wikipedia. Dude, Wikipedia is awesome to get a quick overview of the thing. Like, that's a great place to start.
Notes of everything.
That's right. It's a great place to start.
And if you, that's like the way you learn is really important. That's a really great point. Like if you're more visual or conversational, then the textbook might not be the way for you to go, but you can enroll in like your community college 1 or 2 semesters of anatomy and like look at a cadaver.
That's right. That's right.
Which might be incredibly useful for you.
I would say as well, like one of the things I probably learn more, I mean, I read all the time, but I'm mostly reading like business books and things like that. Learning like random facts about interesting things to me, I get that on YouTube almost exclusively. YouTube's amazing. You want to know how an airplane engine works? There's an amazing video on YouTube on that very thing. There's actually probably 5 amazing videos. It's like almost anything you want to learn. And again, that's one of the things we've tried to do on the Barbell Logic channel is all these how-to videos. We've talked through biomechanics. We talked through the philosophy of programming. Programming is another thing that if you're in this field, you should understand. You should have a Newtonian understanding of programming. What I mean is like it's not the way they taught me math, which was just like the rules. Addition, the rule is this, and subtraction, the rule is this. Like I didn't really understand to this day. I don't really understand what the quadratic formula is and what it's doing and what it's explaining, but I can quote the quadratic formula. And so for programming, that doesn't work. You have to understand, everybody's different. And so you need to understand, you need to have a really clear understanding of the whys of programming and not just the hows of programming. And shameless plug. I mean, I think our MED series, which I think was series 6 here on the podcast and the discussions we've had, it explains that it's not just the hows, it's the whys. And so, and really it's the same with those like big picture things like anatomy. You should understand, like not just the academic response of what a hamstring does, but like,
because you're never going to talk about that with a client.
No, but you do actually talk a lot about your hamstrings to a client, but you talk about it in a way that you need them to understand it. And that comes back, we've talked about this too. That comes back to the Feynman Method, right? With a guy that was like this, like one of the best physicists in the world. If you can't explain it to a kid, if you can't explain it to one of your clients, like you don't really know it enough. And so there's this like, okay, we start with introductory knowledge, right? Like that's find the Wikipedia, get the high school textbook, like those things that everybody should know about that's in this field. So basic anatomy, basic physics or biomechanics, basic programming. Those things are basic understanding of energy systems. Like everybody in fitness uses you should understand what the difference is between aerobic, anaerobic, glycolytic.
I think our Barbell Academy has all of those courses.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the principle, that's exactly what principles is set on, right? The purpose of the Barbell Academy principles course is a wonderful prerequisite for professional coaches or for future professional coaches. But it's also the thing that just anybody who likes to geek out on barbells should know. Like principles is not just made, matter of fact, it's specifically not made for coaches. It's made for barbell enthusiasts and as a prerequisite for coaches. And so those things that you would say, everybody that's in this field need to know are covered in principles. And then as you start to go dive deeper, and if you want to dive deep into barbell strength training, into what we do at Barbell Logic, then that's where the advanced course works really well as well. But I think you've got some points on this. You can't be a master coach of all.
Yeah.
Right. It's a jack of all trades, master of none. I think for most of us who have been successful in the coaching industry, we are a master of something.
Yeah.
But it's like one thing or two things. So,
yeah.
I mean,
especially when you're first getting started. Like I remember when I first got started, it was just like, I need to know all the answers to all of these things. And I'm not that today. This is 10 years later. But you kind of start to define, and CJ and I talked about this before, like what problem it is that you want to solve. And you'll know because that's the one you're most curious about. And you'll start to put yourself in front of the clients who are asking for that problem to be solved. And so once you have that bare knowledge, you get to be in front of those people and then you learn what else you need to know. And that kind of opens the door, like I said, of what other questions to answer. But like, I think there are many opportunities for people to convince themselves that they don't know enough to start coaching. And it's true. When you first start coaching, you don't know enough to be everything for your client, but you can be something for them. You can start to help solve their problem. And then each year you're going to get a little bit smarter. You're going to get a little bit smarter and a little bit smarter. And
especially in that niche where you have your passion, right? And so you see people that fall in those niches and there's like, I really love to train athletes, or I really love to train seniors, or I really love to train postpartum moms, or I really love to train the military or tactical guys. Like, and as you get deeper and deeper into that, like, again, I think allowing yourself the freedom to pursue where your passion is, I think is really important. One of the things I think that I don't know that I've had pushback on, but it wasn't even on purpose. Like when you're first becoming a coach, who doesn't want to work with athletes and people who are like, because athletes have this great return on investment for their training, right? You can coach them and they just
and
get
they
better.
really want to be there.
Right. They're just right.
They're already doing what you want them to do.
That's exactly right. But at some point, relatively early in my career, I just sort of became passionate about training like the everyman, the every woman. And I think it was because I felt like they understood that what they were doing would improve their quality of life better than athletes do, right? And that's not to like, man, if you're into training athletes, you train athletes, you train your ass off to do that. But a lot of times for athletes, their improvement in quality of life is how much they play in their sport, how well they play in their sport, if they win the championship or the whatever in their sport. And so what we do in the weight room is a means to an end there. And for us, training, for me at least, I can speak for myself, training like just middle-aged normal people, actually the one that seems to be that most trainers are the least excited to train. I just fell in love with training people like that because for me, their return on investment was to watch their quality of life improve and to watch them be better at whatever they did in life, be better, dads or moms, be better husbands or wives, be better bosses, be better workers, be better. And they kind of understood how what they were doing in the weight room, how it directly impacted those things. And because I was passionate about that, like I get it. There's tons of people out there like, man, we're just picking up iron and putting it down. Like you attach too much philosophy to it. That's fine. That's totally cool. It's just, but I believe there's more to it, at least for me, of what I do and how I coach. And so the people that I think that are attracted to Barbell Logic specifically, or that train with us, often get that same sort of thing. So I think the culture of who you are and how you believe and all those sort of things, I think it ends up playing a big piece of it. The reality is you don't need to know all that stuff in the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
Because you won't know where you're going to go. Like I couldn't have told you, there's no way in 1997, 1999, if you were like, what will you be doing and what type of people will you be coaching?
Right.
I would have had no clue, no clue. Right. Because I was a power lifter at the time. That was the other thing. That's where I first started getting this. It was like, oh, I'm going to learn about Westside Barbell and Louis Simmons and Dave Tate and Glenn Penlay. And like, that was what started me down that process. But I don't train power lifters today. That's just the thing that started, like, that's the thing that piqued my interest in the beginning.
Yeah. And this is interesting. Like the whole idea of this episode is like, what knowledge do you need to set yourself apart? And I think the reality is that a lot of us coaches and trainers have similar levels of knowledge to up to a certain kind of baseline. And yet everybody is completely different.
Yes.
So what you'll do is you'll start to accumulate your knowledge, but you have to communicate that knowledge in your own voice.
That's right.
That is what sets you apart. It's probably not the knowledge. It is how you communicate to the people that you want to talk to.
That's
and
exactly right.
If you try to talk to everybody, it's not going to work.
That's right.
You cannot be everything for anybody. I cannot be you, Matt Reynolds. Like, it's great. It's great that you exist as who you are. And it's great that I exist as who I am as a trainer. But if I tried to act like you, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, because it's not authentic.
Yeah. And, we came from like a learning environment where we utilized a lot of loud cues that were monosyllabic. And if we were in the gym, it would just sound like a repeating soundtrack of the same thing.
Yeah.
And you stood out because you communicated differently.
Right.
And I think you have to have the ability to identify your own voice and make it repeatable and consistent because you will establish trust in your knowledge, but then you will also establish trust in your identity.
Yeah, that's really
and
good.
That I think is what sets you apart.
That's outstanding because so there is sort of a step one here, which is that a lot of people live life and they never care enough to even learn the knowledge they should know for the thing. Like forget the being a strength coach, like anything. And I've said this before. I've often used the example of like a trash man. I don't know what kind of knowledge you need to be a trash man, but I'm sure there is some. Mm-hmm. And if that's what you are, and now I'm not knocking it, by the way, like you should be the best damn trash man on the planet. Like that should be the goal, is to learn. I would want to learn everything there is about the thing I do. And so step one is that. But then step two is, especially if you work with other people, can you then authentically and effectively communicate that knowledge back to the people that you need to be able to communicate to? So this started for me when I was a junior high teacher. Man, it's hard to talk to junior high kids. And I think, I look back on it now and I was like, boy, I sure wish I was never a public school teacher and had just gone into business early. But it was obvious that I learned some skills over the 10 years of teaching junior high kids who did not want to be there, and to be able to hold their attention and speak at their level and get them to nod their head yes and read a crowd and figure out, like,
so hard.
It is hard, super hard, right? Or when I was a strength coach at the high school and would have 60 or 70 kids in the weight room all at the same time, and I was coaching all of them.
Man.
Like that's really hard too. And you can't do a great job at it, but it makes coaching one person a lot easier. Right. Just back in the old days when I used to play poker and I'd play online poker, I'd play 16 tables at once, and then you go and you sit down at one table at a casino, which by the way, I don't play poker anymore, but when you can play 16 tables at once and then you go to one, you're like, bro, I can like really play this one. Because this,
you know what? This is such a good point. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no.
You just gave me a huge light bulb. I think when people are trying to sell themselves on social media, on their website, whatever, they try to talk to everybody.
Yes.
But if you just talk to one person, you're going to connect with, you might only need 20 clients to survive.
That's right.
But if you're trying to talk to 20,000 people, I think it might just get lost. But like you said, if you have a controlled audience, you had the classroom, you had the one person you're playing poker against, or you have the gym. That's right. That's who you talk to. Yeah. And that's who I think you can imagine to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really good. And again, it's then being comfortable with who it is that you're talking to. It's the niche, right? You cannot be in the beginning. Everybody is sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, because you don't really know where the niche is. You don't know who you're resonating with in the beginning. I'm not saying to cast that super wide net. You just kind of automatically do it. I mean, when you're young, especially, and broke. So there are some people who listen to this and they have successful careers outside of the gym. They're doctors or they're accountants or they're lawyers or whatever. And so they could actually learn, and we see this, they fall in love with lifting and getting strong. And they want to start coaching like their spouses or their family. And they can actually be a little more choosy. They can be more choosy about who they coach, or who, they've probably built that friend group that they already resonate with. That's probably a good place to start with your coaching. But when you start this and you're young and you're broke, you're just doing the best you can. And you don't really even know how the message is going to resonate. You don't even know entirely what that message is. You haven't developed your own like philosophy of training or coaching yet, but like all those things should come over time. And I think, again, this comes back to that idea of the never ending pursuit of knowledge. Like you should constantly be pursuing this. There's no, like, one of the things I was listening to the podcast that you guys did last week, you and CJ, on imposter syndrome. And man, it was so good. It was so good. And I was thinking about how I have the same issue in business as a CEO. Like I'll get that imposter syndrome. I don't have that as a coach. I actually don't have imposter syndrome as a coach. It's not that I didn't ever, but I know I'm a good coach. But the reality is this: I'll learn from anybody as a coach to this day. I love going to a camp. I was at a camp last weekend with Andrew, and I hear little things. I watch you at a camp and I pick up on stuff, and like, I don't walk in with a chip on my shoulder like I'm the best damn coach on the planet in here. Like I'm in there with other great coaches, and I am so excited to learn from them. When someone teaches me a fix for programming, when I'm struggling with programming with my clients, and I learn a thing and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can make this tweak and I can do this thing. Like one of the things I think that really helps you is when you're actually confident enough in your skills to just learn from anybody, to even potentially learn from that 18-year-old kid.
Totally.
You know what that 18-year-old kid often has? He has a tremendous amount of like an amazing personality and ambition in the way that they know how to talk to people, right? And so they might not have the knowledge, but there are these things that we can learn from anybody. And to ever get to that point in your life when you're just like, I've arrived, I know it all. Or maybe the scarier little brother is, I just don't care anymore. You get ambivalent and you're like, I don't care about learning about strength training anymore. And I haven't been there. That would be a scary place for me, I think, if I did this. And I'm sure there's people that struggle with it, that we see people move from one thing to another. They get really into strength training. They do it for several years. They get really strong, whatever. And then for some reason, they just move to another thing. And then they become just as passionate about Brazilian jiu-jitsu or riding a motorcycle or whatever. And like that becomes their crowd. I think they're trying to find a place to fit. And that was never really the reason for me for training. It was like I was genuinely interested in learning about the body and how this worked and how I got strong. Like that's never changed. So at 43 years old, I'm still just as excited to learn something new as I was at 18. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's that same quest for knowledge, which you can have for like the subject matter that you're coaching. And then you can also have it on like a very, very like acute level of the person who you're working with at that moment. So when you're going through that time of just like having to work with anybody because you need the money and you need to start building clientele, is like, what knowledge can you establish about what is important to this person?
That's right.
Because that's a great thing to learn about what motivates them, what works for them, what they need to be able to do in their own lives. Like you said, if it's an athlete, they need to not get hurt. They need to perform well. If it's a mom, she needs to be able to have flexibility. She needs to have her own time. She needs to know that she's capable of this. And if it's a professional, they need other things. So just like knowledge in just that person is enough to set you apart for that person.
That's exactly right. That's another great point. How important is when you're in a service industry, which strength coaching is, how important is the relationship, the professional relationship between you and your clients? Like it's the reason they stay. Like they often will come because of your reputation or your as being like a knowledgeable or a great coach. But like the reason they end up staying long term is because you've spent the time to develop the knowledge about that person to connect with that person, whether that's in-person coaching or online coaching. That matters. And so that's exactly right. It doesn't work very well. And I see this all the time. In the fitness industry, it's specifically bad about it. People get into it because they are egocentric narcissists. Hey, listen, I've struggled with that in my life. I don't think it's who I am anymore because I've got the kicked out of me enough to not be. But people get all about themselves and the way they look and the way they perform. And I love the way I look in a mirror and all this sort of stuff. Like I should go into like personal training because like I look great and I'm tan and I got the frosted tips and I got, it's that sort of thing. Like that doesn't work. That's not sustainable. It's
not gonna last.
You've got to be somebody who genuinely, authentically cares about your client.
Right.
And again, there are types of clients. Again, you and I both, look, we're both really good coaches. But if you look at my clients and you look at your clients, they're different clients.
Totally.
They are not the same clients at all. I couldn't coach your clients as effectively as you coach your clients and vice versa. Right. And so that's why finding that person, finding that group of people, finding that little niche, not having to speak to the whole world, trying to speak to that little group of people that you resonate with. It's perfectly okay. And then it also makes it perfectly okay. I've had to deal with this too, with when you have the haters. Man, I remember how bad that used to bother me, the haters. And I would like go on vacation and I'd be like, they'd be sending me on Instagram and it would just be like ruining my life. Now I'm just like, that's just a group of people that that you don't resonate with. What does it matter? That doesn't matter. Who cares? Right. And so, it's understanding like I can't resonate with everybody. Not only can I can't resonate with most people. I can't resonate with 50% of the people. I probably can't resonate with 10% of the people. But that's okay because there's like 8 billion people on the planet.
Yeah. And you don't need 8 billion people.
I need 20. You're exactly right. You need 15, 20, 25, and then you make a real good living as a coach.
Right.
And being able to resonate with those people are key. I talked to a guy yesterday. definitely remain nameless. So it was just we have a mutual friend, and he's like, hey, he's got an online coaching business. Could you just talk to him, give him half an hour? And I had a conversation with a really nice guy, very personable, was charged people for 3 months at a time, made them pay 3 months at a time upfront online for an online coaching service. And every 3 months they would have to re-up. And it was like fairly expensive. It was like, it was in our wheelhouse. And I said, what percentage of people after 3 months re-up? He said 30%. I was like, oh, that's not good. That's not a good thing. And so, and I was explaining to him, now we have to find where the source of that is. Is the source that, one, you're charging somebody, like you're charging them $1,000 for 3 months of training, which is a pretty high ticket item. And after 3 months, they have to make a decision at the end of 3 months. Do I want to spend another $1,000? That's not the right decision that you want to have them. I said, dude, you got to go to an automatic revenue model. Instead of charging them $1,000 or $900 for 3 months, charge them $299 per month. Auto charge them. If you need a 3-month contract, start the 3-month contract, but they're automatically getting charged in month 4. Now, if they still keep canceling, then the pricing model is not the problem. Then the service is the problem. The connection is the problem. That's the problem, right? And so figuring that out, I think, is really important. Like if you resonate, man, these clients that we read, the BL1K clients that have been with us for 1,000 plus workouts, how much form coaching do they actually need at this point?
So true. Yeah.
Do you know how much form I fix on Brett McKay and John Floater?
Yeah.
Almost none.
Yeah.
Why do they stay?
Trust, accountability, and the
relationship. That's exactly right. That's why they're there. So that's huge. And then I think the last piece of that authenticity is, and we talked about this many times before, you don't have to be the best at the thing.
Yeah.
But you better have tried the thing that you're trying to teach. So like authentic, like you can't really be an effective coach having not done the thing. You don't have to have squatted 600 pounds or deadlifted 700 pounds. But if you're going to ask somebody to literally be refined by this fire of voluntary hardship, you better have been able to have gone through it at some point in your life. And you really should be pursuing it at all points if it's actually that important to you. And so I think having that experience, one, it helps develop trust again. They trust you, like they've been there. They know what it's like. Two, it helps you communicate more effectively. Think of the times you're talking to somebody and the first time you put somebody under a barbell on a squat in a low bar position. And I'm like, hey, this really hurts right here. Right. And I touch like on their pec and delt, like where it meets. I'm like, it's really tight right there. Right. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, and you know how I know it's really tight right there? Because that's where it's really tight on me too. And I'm like, it's okay. You're not going to hurt yourself. It's really tight. It's okay. Right. Take a deep breath, stand up. Because when you have felt what they are feeling and can communicate back to them precisely and accurately exactly what they're feeling in the moment. And they're like, oh my God, how did they know that I feel exactly that?
Totally.
Like, well, I know because I've been there. Yeah. That's a big piece of it too.
Yeah. Big time.
So there you go.
Love it. Yeah. I think
knowledge. That's how we set ourselves apart. So pursue knowledge and ever-ending pursuit of knowledge. Start with the big stuff that everybody should know. Doesn't matter what version or style of strength coaching, fitness coaching, yoga, whatever. Everybody should have those basic knowledge pieces of things like anatomy, physiology, basic biomechanics, basic programming. Those things are covered. Shameless plug in Principles course. You can go to the Barbell Academy, go to barbelllogic.com, the Academy page, and sign up for Principles course. That's great for everybody. And then start to find your niche and start to find your voice and find the people the group of people that you're passionate about and that you connect with. Well, don't just be, I'm really passionate about NFL players. Like, well, I mean, that might not resonate, I'm really passionate with billionaires. I would love to be the trainer for all the billionaires in the world. Like, except I don't train any,
that could be a journey and you could do it. Maybe just be a different pivot.
That's exactly right. So there's a two-way street there, right? So what you're passionate about And then if it's actually resonating with that audience, I think you've got to have some self-awareness there as well. So, you know, you might think you want to train athletes just like I did, or powerlifters just like I did. And then one day you're like, you know, what's actually really fun is training like 45-year-old moms and dads. And that's just who I resonate with. And so there's my niche. And your niche doesn't need to be my niche, and your cues don't need to be my cues, and your voice inflection doesn't need to be my voice inflection, right? You get to find your own. So start with those basics, move into the things that you're passionate about, never stop learning, and then continue to do the thing that you're teaching, because it'll make you a better teacher to be able to have that experience under your belt.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is another episode of the Barbell Logic podcast. If this brought you value, we would love a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. Again, remember that Nikki and I are, and Nikki and CJ and whoever's on the podcast, we are now on YouTube. So you can just search the Barbell Logic podcast on YouTube now, and it'll show up, and you can actually watch us live and in color. Those are a lot of fun. It's always interesting because like on day one, a podcast, we get like 12,000 downloads, audio only. So they're just listening to our voice. And we get like 120 views on YouTube. I think watching YouTube is way more fun. It's like I have the podcast that I listen to that if they're on video, I love watching them on video.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. So if you haven't done that yet, it's a blast to go to YouTube and listen to the Barbell Logic podcast. Watch the Barbell Logic podcast there as well. But we'd love a 5-star review. Share this with a friend. And man, don't ever end the pursuit of trying to become the best coach you could possibly be. Yeah.
Find your identity and enjoy your identity, and work on your knowledge at the same time. And you can do so much cool stuff.
Very true. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.